When Chaplin made his first overtly political film, The Big Boss bore a strong resemblance to Henry Ford.
Hey! Quit stalling, get back to work. Go on.
Henry Ford had invented the assembly line, which was the trigger for Chaplin's satire.
Attention foreman. Trouble on bench 5. Check on the nut tighteners. Nuts coming through loose on bench 5. Attention foreman.
I thought Modern Times was the greatest movie I'd ever seen up till that point, and as a matter of fact, I think maybe I still do. And the whole idea of attacking capitalism, not only from an economic and social point of view, but from an intensely human point of view. What he was talking about was people becoming a cog, becoming part of machinery, because we're so dependent on it. That is the movie where a red flag falls off a truck and he's walking down the street and a parade comes in behind him and the cops then come in and beat the hell out of him. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant ideas and, God, the execution.
There was a revolutionary feeling growing, and people who had been respectably middle class were actually breaking into bakeries and stealing bread. It was extreme.
The violence of industrial relations was also extreme. While in Germany, life was being transformed. Once Hitler had come to power, people accepted the supremacy of the state over the individual. Women were allotted a secondary role, while men were trained for war. Hitler tackled unemployment with huge construction projects, like these pioneer motorways.
There was an admiration for Hitler because we hadn't seen his evil things yet. They hadn't begun to manifest. We saw that he helped cure their inflation and put the people to work, and he had all the young men marching around with shovels over their shoulders instead of rifles, And I don't think that anyone really wanted a dictator in our country, but when we looked at Hitler, we saw maybe something like this could get us out of our depression.
These rallies at Nuremberg, Hitler told the world, were for peace and freedom.
Tráilers.
And I thought it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Never seen anything as wonderful. And I screamed with the best of them, you know. Heil, Heil, or whatever. And I don't feel guilty about that. How can I? I was 11. What I found extraordinarily worthy was the theater.
In the mid-30s, political leaders all over the world expressed their admiration for the astonishing achievements of Adolf Hitler. The anti-Jewish boycott would become an important feature of Chaplin's film. The barber has lost his memory and knows nothing of the dictator's rise to power. The word Jew was hardly ever mentioned in American films.
You leave that alone. Don't be silly. I'm not silly. I appreciate that. When you talk to me, hail, hinkle, and salute. Who are you, anyway? I'll show you who I am.
The emigration began. many Jews set out for the land of opportunity.
Our unemployment problem was transferred to the United States from foreign lands. And if we had refused admission to the 16,500,000 foreign-born in our midst, there would be no serious unemployment problem to harass us.
The German-American Bund held mass rallies in Madison Square Garden before audiences of 20,000. They followed exactly the Nazi Party line. Anti-Semitism in America was so rife, there was every chance of fascism succeeding in the United States. Over 100 organizations put out anti-Semitic literature like this. No wonder the subject became hard to discuss.
I know among other Jews, some of them thought that it was making waves. Shouldn't talk about those things, because there was certainly a feeling among many in the what you might call the Jewish establishment that such things you didn't mention. It would just bring more trouble.
There were congressional investigations into the Jewish influence on motion pictures. It's incredible what went on in this country.
The producers, if you check the films that were made in the 30s until late in the 30s, they were very wary of rocking the boat because they were still making money in Germany. They were making money in Italy, and the bottom line was profit and really not principle.
Hitler in particular saw every American film he could.
War ein Filmenthusiast. Das war für ihn die schönste Sache. Auch der schönste Zeitvertreib, den hatte. Der Bengal Lancers, das hat sehr gern gehabt. Und dann hat gerne Greta Garbo-Filme, selbstverständlich. Die hätte gerne empfangen wie einen Staatsmann in Berlin.
Propaganda Minister Dr. Goebbels would have preferred German films for the German public, but they loved American films as much as Hitler. Goebbels ensured a steady supply. Hitler would see something like The Hound of the Baskervilles and would even record his opinion. The ones he disliked were often banned.
Louis B. Mayer of MGM would actually run those films with the Nazi German consul and was willing to take out the things that the Nazi objected to.
The problem with Hollywood, which I've often said to my friends, is that we're living in the company of cowards. They won't stand up for anything. They pretend to stand up for it, but when the money is down, they fade out.
Walter Wanger made a film called Blockade, which was self-evidently about the Spanish Civil War, but it never mentioned Spain or Franco or the Civil War, because it was felt that this would complicate acceptability in many countries.
Henry Fonda played the lead in Blockade.
And I remember the last sentence of the picture. He turned directly to camera and looking out at us with those great Fonda eyes, said, "Where is the conscience of the world?"
The Anschluss. Germany unites with Austria, 1938. Hitler last saw Vienna as a poverty-stricken youth.
Als Führer und Kanzler der deutschen Nation und des Reichs melde ich vor der deutschen Geschichte nunmehr den Eintritt meiner Heimat in das Deutsche Reich.
It was 3 days after the Anschluss, and I was walking in the street with my best friend, and came upon this group, a number of middle-aged ladies and gentlemen, all obviously upper-class citizens. And they were on their knees and cleaning the pavement with toothbrushes. There were lots of Viennese in this group, laughing and taunting them, and it was You know, it was really something that could have been out of The Great Dictator, you're quite right. Because one almost laughed, it was so terrible.
Against a background of aggression and appeasement, Chaplin announced his film in October 1938. The British, anxious not to upset Hitler, said they would ban it. To general astonishment, Chaplin went ahead.
Every one of my friends, many of whom were Jewish, like myself, felt that a David had arisen, a comic David, to fight Goliath. And we could only be happy.
Kristallnacht, November the 9th, 1938. The Nazis unleashed a wave of violence against the Jews.
Wenn es dem internationalen Finanzjudentum in und außerhalb Europas gelingen sollte, die Völker noch einmal in einen Weltkrieg zu stürzen, dann wird das Ergebnis nicht die Bolschewisierung der Erde und damit der Sieg des Judentums sein, sondern die Vernichtung der jüdischen Rasse in Europa.
There was a big movement afoot among Jewish producers in Hollywood to discourage Chaplin's film. A lot of them went to him and said, look, Charlie, you're going to make it terribly hard for our people over there. You know, it's going to make Hitler furious. And Charlie would say, well, I don't give a damn if he's furious. He can't be any worse than he is, can he, you know? He even felt that there would be trouble with getting a release. They were saying, this is a disaster, Charlie, you know, not just for the Jews, but for the American foreign policy and so forth. Charlie was beginning to get kind of scared. Roosevelt got word of this, and he sent Harry Hopkins out to talk to Charlie. And Hopkins said, look, Charlie, the president is all for this. He said, you don't have to worry about their boycotting release. He'll see that it's released. He feels that this is a very important thing and that you must go ahead and not listen to any of these people who are trying to discourage you.
In April 1939, Hitler celebrated his 50th birthday with one of the largest military parades in history. For the first time since 1919, tanks rolled through Berlin. Chaplin celebrated his birthday by working on his script. He said he wanted a Berlin premiere for the Führer's benefit. Chaplin saw the Russians as the only hope to defeat Nazism. But to his horror, in August, the unthinkable happened. The Nazis signed a pact with the Soviet Union.
I believe the great phrase was, Russia is not going to pull England and France's coals out of the fire. That was the great rationalization for the pact. So the particular atmosphere that I ran into was of tragedy, a calamity, the end of the world.
The victory parade in Warsaw. Germany and Russia have carved up Poland. England and France have declared war on Hitler. As Chaplin began work, his brother Sidney filmed him. Sound equipment was installed and a ghetto set built at his Hollywood studio. The finance for the film came not from the other Hollywood studios, but entirely from Chaplin himself. Filming in the ghetto began on September the 9th, 1939, 6 days after the outbreak of the Second World War, in conditions of strict secrecy.
Hey. Das schütten Sie keine
Unknown to Chaplin, events for Jews were worse than even he portrayed them. Nonetheless, he took great risks with his film.
A very daring thing to have done, really, to satirize the Jews and Hitler and Mussolini and make a sad comedy. It's almost tragic, you know. It's the comedy element. You find yourself laughing at something that you don't want to laugh at.
Before we take you down, you'll finish this. Here. Go on, paint that.
Even though this was a comedy, Chaplin forced his audience to face the Nazi brutality. Chaplin was proud of the equipment he was using for the first time.
So he called up a dear friend of his, Louis Milestone. He said, "You got to come down here. Something I have to show you. It's incredibly important. You have to get down there." So Milestone came down. My father said, look at this, look at this. And Milestone saw it, and he had a crane, I guess, that lifted the camera or moved it over. He said, what do you think of that? And Milestone said, "Charlie, they've been doing that for years."
In his own studio, Chaplin was also a dictator, but usually a benevolent one.
He always could divorce the little man, as he called himself, from his everyday living, because he was so entirely different in person than anything that he did on the screen. But with the great dictator, he became more and more important to himself. I used to laugh so, because the moment he put on the uniform, he'd smooth down his flat tummy and preen a little bit, and always looking in the mirror just to see that everything was just so, he was not a vain man, but he certainly was during the making.
His Excellency is about to descend the stairs.
His agent.
Oh, Your Excellency! Oh, are you hurt? Oh, strap! Da fluten Bremen, da cheese a cracken!
Oh, fluten, the banana!
Da fluten! The banana!
Then you do that kind of a banana!
The banana stumpt and stripped mit seiner Grund and singt the banana!
The banana?
That bigger Buben is...
That was what was so interesting. Everybody that was in the film, that was in a uniform, that was important with Charlie, they lived their part, and they thought it was simply wonderful.
He's going to take Austerlitz. I can't believe it.
Sein der Strapnitz, you can't believe it. Much den struck the big Buben.
Not Your Excellency.
You let him steal march on us.
No, I...
Den Buben, you can't believe it.
If he didn't like something, he'd do it again and do it again. And then come back to it a week later and do it again. Which he could do because it was his money. But he was a perfectionist, which is marvelous, but very few people get to do that.